When the first Tiger Way tank rolled onto the snowy fields near Leningrad in August 1942, the landscape of armored warfare changed significantly. Soviet soldiers observed with concern as their anti-tank rounds proved ineffective against its substantial armor. Reports quickly reached Moscow. A new German heavy tank had emerged, and contemporary Allied equipment struggled to counter it. This 57-ton steel vehicle, with its powerful 88mm gun, would soon become one of the most significant armored vehicles on European battlefields, earning a reputation that continues to this day. The Tiger tank wasn't merely a machine. It represented a technological leap that affected battlefield dynamics before engaging in combat. Before we dive into this extraordinary story, tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? It's incredible to see our historical community spread across the world. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Each subscription helps us continue unearthing these fascinating stories that shaped our world. Now, let's get to the story. The development of the Tiger tank began long before the first prototype emerged from the Henschel factory in 1942. Its origins can be traced to Germany's experiences in World War I, where Allied tanks had played an important role in breaking through defensive lines. Throughout the interwar years, German military theorists like Heinz Guderian advocated for the development of armored forces, despite restrictions imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. In his influential 1937 book, Achtung, Panzer, Guderian outlined concepts for mobile warfare centered around tanks operating together with aircraft and mechanized infantry, the foundation of what would later be called Blitzkrieg. When Germany began rearming in the 1930s, tank development became a priority. The early Panzer I and Dug tanks were essentially training vehicles, but they provided valuable experience for German engineers and manufacturers. By the time conflict began in 1939, the more capable Panzer III and Ihrer tanks formed the core of German armored divisions. These medium tanks proved effective in early campaigns, but during the Battle of France in 1940, German tank commanders faced a challenging reality. Their Panzer IIIs and IVs had difficulty penetrating the armor of the French Char B1 and British Matilda II tanks. Only by using the versatile 88mm anti-aircraft gun in an anti-tank role could German forces effectively counter these well-armored vehicles. This encounter with superior Allied tanks prompted serious concern within the German Armored Corps. Colonel General Heinz Guderian, who would later become Inspector General of Armored Troops, submitted an urgent report emphasizing the need for heavier tanks with more powerful guns. The German leadership took a strong interest in the matter, requesting a new tank with unprecedented protection and firepower, a vehicle that would provide technological advantages on the battlefield. By January 1941, formal specifications were issued for a heavy tank weighing approximately 45 tons with thick armor and a high-velocity gun capable of defeating any Allied tank at ranges beyond 1,500 meters. The timing of this new tank program coincided with Germany's decision to invade the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa, launched on June 22, 1941, initially saw German successes as panzer divisions advanced through Soviet defenses. However, German confidence diminished when they encountered the Soviet T-34 tank. The T-34 featured innovative design elements combining sloped armor, a powerful 76.2mm gun, wide tracks for mobility in difficult terrain, and a diesel engine less vulnerable to fire than the gasoline engines used in German tanks. General Guderian later wrote in his memoirs, "Our Panzer IV with its short 75mm gun was outclassed. The T-34 made our tanks obsolete at a stroke. The urgency for developing the new heavy tank increased. Two competing designs emerged, one from Ferdinand Porsche and another from the Henschel Company. Porsche's design featured an innovative electric transmission system, while Henschel chose a more conventional mechanical transmission. Both prototypes were demonstrated for military leadership in East Prussia on April 20, 1942. Though the leadership initially preferred the Porsche design, the Henschel prototype demonstrated greater reliability during testing. With the situation on the Eastern Front becoming increasingly challenging, there was no time for further development of the complex Porsche system. The Henschel design was approved for immediate production as the Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger. What made the Tiger I truly innovative was not any single technological breakthrough, but rather the combination of existing technologies refined to their maximum potential. The core of the Tiger was its 88 Motortyd KWK-36 gun, a tank-mounted version of the effective 80mm Flak K-36 anti-aircraft gun that had already demonstrated capability against Allied armor in France and North Africa. This high-velocity weapon could penetrate 112 millimeters of armor at a range of 1,000 meters, sufficient to defeat any Allied tank of the period at distances where they could not effectively return fire. The gun was paired with advanced Zeiss optics that allowed gunners to identify and engage targets with precision. A Tiger gunner could reliably hit a target tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters, while most Allied tanks struggled to achieve half that accuracy. Complementing this firepower was the Tiger's substantial armor protection. The frontal armor was 100 millimeter thick, with the turret front protected by 120 millimeters of hardened steel. German metallurgical expertise ensured this armor maintained high quality, unlike some Soviet tanks that suffered from inconsistent production standards. The armor was carefully engineered, with interlocking plates welded together to minimize vulnerabilities. Even the Tiger's side armor, at 80 millimeter thick, exceeded the frontal armor of most contemporary medium tanks. This armor configuration made the Tiger highly resistant to frontal engagement by standard Allied anti-tank weapons of 1942-43. British 6-pounder and American 75mm tank guns could only penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor at very close range, a challenging proposition given the Tiger's superior firepower. The Tiger's first combat deployment came in August 1942 near Leningrad, where a small number of these new tanks joined the 502nd Heavy Tank Battalion. The deployment was hurried, with crews receiving limited training on their new vehicles before entering combat. Consequently, many initial technical issues resulted from operator inexperience rather than design flaws. Despite these challenges, the Tigers made an immediate impact. Soviet tank crews, accustomed to the qualitative advantage their T-34s held over standard German Panzers, were surprised to discover that their 76.2 millimeter guns could not penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor even at close range. A report from the Soviet 124th Tank Brigade described an engagement where a single Tiger, positioned at a strategic road junction, disabled multiple T-34s without sustaining damage. Information about this new German heavy tank spread quickly through Soviet forces. Reports intercepted by German intelligence indicated growing concern among Soviet troops about encountering the Tiger in combat. Soviet leadership requested urgent briefings on the new threat and ordered accelerated development of tank destroyers with more powerful guns. Soviet communications initially attempted to minimize the Tiger's capabilities, describing it as merely an over-engineered, unreliable vehicle that could be defeated through appropriate tactics. There was some truth to these claims. Early Tigers experienced numerous mechanical problems, particularly with their transmission systems, which were strained by the tank's substantial weight. However, as German maintenance crews gained experience with the vehicle, reliability improved noticeably. By early 1943, the Tiger had evolved from an experimental platform to a mature combat system. The Tiger's most significant early deployment occurred during the Battle of Kursk in July 1943, the largest tank battle in history. Operation Citadel, as the Germans called their offensive, aimed to eliminate a large Soviet salient around the city of Kursk. The plan involved a classic pincer movement, with German armored formations attacking from the north and south to encircle and neutralize substantial Soviet forces. For this critical operation, the Germans concentrated approximately 120 Tigers, nearly every operational Tiger available at the time. These were organized into independent heavy tank battalions that would lead the attack, creating openings through Soviet defenses for the more numerous Panzer IVs and Panthers to exploit. The Soviets, however, had anticipated the German attack and prepared defensive positions of unprecedented depth and complexity. Multiple belts of anti-tank guns, extensive minefields, pre-registered artillery, and strategically positioned T-34s awaited the German advance. When the battle began on July 5, 1943, the Tigers operated in terrain that minimized many of their advantages. The open steppes around Kursk offered excellent visibility, but this meant Soviet observers could identify the distinctive silhouette of the Tiger from considerable distances. Though technically superior to individual Soviet tanks, the Tigers could be targeted by multiple anti-tank guns simultaneously or maneuvered against in ways that exposed their less protected sides and rear. Despite these challenges, Tiger crews achieved notable results during the Kursk offensive. German military records document significant tactical successes by Tiger units in several sectors. However, these technical achievements could not overcome the strategic situation. The Soviets, with their extensive reserves of personnel and equipment, could absorb losses that would have been unsustainable for other armies. For every T-34 disabled by a Tiger, Soviet factories produced 10 more. By mid-July, with the offensive stalled and Allied forces landing in Sicily, German High Command canceled Operation Citadel. The Battle of Kursk represented a turning point. German forces would not launch another strategic offensive of comparable scale on the Eastern Front. Following Kursk, the Tigers increasingly served in defensive roles, utilizing their long-range firepower to counter Soviet attacks. German tactics evolved to address the Tiger's limitations, particularly its limited mobility and high fuel consumption. Rather than using Tigers as spearheads for mobile operations, German commanders positioned them at key terrain features where they could influence the surrounding battlefield without extensive maneuvering. A frequently employed tactic was to place Tigers on reverse slopes with only their turrets visible above the crest. This minimized exposure while allowing the powerful 88mm gun to engage advancing formations. Soviet commanders recognized these positions, often redirecting their attacks to avoid areas known to be defended by Tigers. By late 1943, Tigers had deployed to other theaters, including Italy and Western Europe. American and British forces encountered their first Tigers during the Italian campaign, where the mountainous terrain further constrained the heavy tanks' mobility, but also channeled Allied advances through valleys and passes that could be covered by well-positioned Tigers. An after-action report from the U.S. 1st Armored Division described an engagement near Anzio, where 3 Tigers delayed an American tank battalion for several hours, disabling multiple Sherman tanks before withdrawing under cover of darkness. General Mark Clark, commanding the U.S. Fifth Army in Italy, urgently requested additional tank destroyers equipped with high-velocity 76mm and 90mm guns to address the Tiger. In preparation for the Allied invasion of France, significant numbers of Tigers transferred to the Western Front in early 1944. By D-Day, June 6, 1944, approximately 120 Tigers were stationed in Normandy, primarily with experienced Panzer divisions. However, Allied bombing had severely disrupted the French rail network, preventing German armored divisions from reaching the invasion beaches during the crucial initial days. When Tigers eventually entered combat in Normandy, they encountered a very different tactical environment than the Eastern Front. The hedgerow country of the Normandy bocage limited visibility and maneuverability, reducing the Tigers' range advantage, but providing excellent defensive positions. Allied air superiority meant Tigers could only move safely at night or in poor weather, as they were priority targets for Allied fighter bombers. Despite these operational constraints, Tigers demonstrated tactical effectiveness in Normandy. In several documented engagements, German tank units successfully delayed Allied advances, often by positioning Tigers at key road junctions or elevated positions overlooking likely approach routes. The combination of the Tiger's 88mm gun and the confined terrain of the Norman hedgerows proved particularly challenging for Allied tank units. However, the limited number of operational Tigers, combined with chronic fuel shortages and constant Allied air attacks, meant these tactical successes could not meaningfully influence the broader strategic situation. The psychological impact of the Tiger extended far beyond its actual battlefield presence. Though only 1,347 Tiger-Is were produced during the war, compared to 49,234 Sherman tanks and 84,000 Haas T-34s, their effect on Allied planning and morale was disproportionate. Tank fright became common among Allied infantry, who often misidentified any German tank as a Tiger. A study of combat reports from Normandy revealed that Allied units reported encountering nearly 3 times as many Tigers as were actually deployed to the entire theater. This phenomenon was not limited to frontline troops. Intelligence officers and senior commanders also tended to overestimate Tiger numbers. General Omar Bradley noted in his memoirs, "The Tiger tank was to our Sherman what a Doberman Pinscher is to a Cocker Spaniel." This perception affected operational planning, with commanders allocating substantial resources to counter what they believed to be Tigers but were often Panzer-IV or Stu G3 assault guns. German information services effectively utilized the Tiger's reputation. Official newsreels regularly featured Tiger tanks in action, highlighting their technical capabilities. German newspapers published accounts of successful tank engagements, emphasizing the Tiger's technological advantages. These carefully presented narratives served multiple purposes. They provided positive news for German civilian morale during increasingly difficult times and projected an image of technical excellence. The Tiger became more than a weapon. It represented German engineering capabilities at a time when the strategic situation was increasingly challenging for Germany. Behind the impressive appearance of the Tiger lay the practical realities of wartime production and economics. Each Tiger tank required approximately 300,000 man-hours to produce, compared to just 8,000 for a Soviet T-34 or 10,000 for an American Sherman. Much of this disparity stemmed from the Tiger's complex design and the high-quality materials required for its construction. The 88mm gun barrel alone required precise machining to tolerances measured in hundredths of a millimeter. The interlocking armor plates needed exacting welding techniques to maintain their protective integrity. The Maybach HL-210P45 engine, later replaced by the more powerful HL-230P45, was essentially a high-performance automobile engine scaled up for military use, requiring precision components that could not be mass-produced using assembly line techniques. Albert Speer, who became Germany's Minister of Armaments and War Production in February 1942, immediately recognized the problem. In his post-war memoirs, Speer wrote, "The Tiger program epitomized everything wrong with our approach to weapons development, over-engineered, resource-intensive, and impossible to produce in strategically significant numbers." Speer repeatedly advocated for simplified designs that could be mass-produced by less specialized workers, but military leadership insisted on prioritizing quality over quantity. This decision reflected a fundamental miscalculation regarding modern industrial warfare. By 1943, the conflict had become one of attrition, where production capacity ultimately mattered more than technical superiority. While Germany struggled to produce 25 Tigers per month at peak production, American factories were shipping 2,000 Sherman tanks monthly, and Soviet tank plants were producing 1,000 T-34s every month. The resource requirements of the Tiger program extended beyond manufacturing capacity. Each Tiger required nearly twice the steel of a Panzer IV and 3 times the copper, both materials that were increasingly scarce in the German war economy. The sophisticated optics required high-quality glass and rare earth elements. The powerful engine consumed limited aviation-grade fuel. Even maintaining Tigers in the field challenged German logistics. A Tiger used 530 liters of fuel to travel 100 kilometers on roads, and twice that cross-country, compared to 200 liters for a Panzer IV. Spare parts were consistently in short supply, forcing maintenance units to use components from damaged Tigers to keep others operational. By late 1944, many Tiger units operated at less than half their authorized strength, not because of combat losses, but due to mechanical issues that could not be addressed because of parts shortages. Despite these limitations, the Tiger's technical performance remains noteworthy by professional standards. The most successful German tank commanders accumulated impressive records while operating Tigers. German military records document numerous examples where experienced Tiger crews, utilizing their vehicles' technical advantages and tactical training, achieved notable results against numerically superior opponents. These outcomes resulted not only from the Tiger's engineering, but also from the thorough training of German tank crews. Unlike Allied forces, which often deployed tanks with minimally prepared crews, Germany invested extensively in simulator training and practical exercises. The average German Tiger crew had substantially more training hours than their Allied counterparts, allowing them to maximize their vehicles' capabilities. The effectiveness of these well-trained crews was further enhanced by German tactical doctrine for heavy tanks. Rather than distributing Tigers among infantry divisions, as the Soviets often did with their heavy KV and IS tanks, the Germans concentrated them in independent heavy tank battalions, Schwerpanzerabteilungen. These formations, typically comprising 45 Tigers organized into 3 companies of 14 tanks each, plus a headquarters unit with 3 tanks, were attached to corps or Army-level headquarters and deployed to strategically important sectors. This approach allowed the Germans to achieve local technical advantages in armor quality even when facing superior numbers overall. A notable example occurred during the Battle of Prokhorovka, where a German heavy tank company, supported by Panzer IVs and assault guns, engaged a much larger Soviet formation in what became one of the largest tank confrontations of the war. Though the Germans eventually withdrew due to ammunition depletion, military records indicate they disabled dozens of Soviet tanks while losing only a few Tigers. As the war turned against Germany in late 1944, the strategic employment of Tigers changed dramatically. With fuel and spare parts in critically short supply, many Tigers became essentially static defensive positions, stationary gun emplacements, rather than tanks in the traditional sense. During the Battle of the Bulge, Germany's final major offensive in the West, the 501st Heavy Tank Battalion committed 45 Tigers to the operation. Despite initial tactical successes, the offensive ultimately failed due to fuel shortages. Many Tigers, immobilized by mechanical problems or lack of fuel, had to be abandoned by their crews. A similar pattern occurred on the Eastern Front, where retreating German forces frequently abandoned functional Tigers simply because they lacked the fuel to move them. In the war's final months, as Allied and Soviet forces advanced into Germany itself, the remaining Tigers participated in defensive actions against overwhelming odds. Tiger crews, many now consisting of hastily trained young recruits alongside experienced veterans, continued to demonstrate professional competence. During the Soviet Berlin offensive in April 1945, a Tiger of the 502nd Heavy Tank Battalion disabled numerous Soviet tanks in a day-long engagement before being immobilized by artillery fire. The crew continued to use their tank as a stationary gun position until ammunition was exhausted, then abandoned the vehicle. Such actions, while tactically noteworthy, could not affect the strategic outcome of the war. By May 1945, when Germany surrendered, fewer than 30 operational Tigers remained from the 347 produced. The Tiger's influence extended beyond World War II. Its design informed post-war tank development, particularly regarding the importance of firepower and frontal armor protection. The Soviet IS-3 heavy tank introduced in the war's final months, showed clear Tiger influence in its heavily sloped frontal armor and powerful 122 mm gun. The British Centurion and American M26 Pershing, both developed specifically to address the Tiger, established design principles that would guide Western tank design for decades. Even modern main battle tanks, with their emphasis on frontal armor protection and long-range firepower, reflect concepts pioneered in the Tiger. However, these modern designs also incorporate lessons learned from the Tiger's limitations, particularly the need to balance protection and firepower with mobility, reliability, and production efficiency. Military historians continue to analyze whether the Tiger represented an engineering achievement or a strategic miscalculation that diverted resources from more practical designs. The quality versus quantity question, whether it's preferable to field smaller numbers of technically superior weapons or larger numbers of adequate ones, remains relevant in military procurement decisions today. In the specific context of World War II, the Tiger exemplified an approach that prioritized individual vehicle capability over production efficiency. This approach proved inadequate against the industrial capacity of the Allied powers, but that does not diminish the Tiger's technical accomplishments. As British military historian Richard Holmes observed, the Tiger was perhaps the most technically sophisticated tank of World War II, but there were never enough of them to affect strategic outcomes. What remains indisputable is the Tiger's place in military history. Nearly 8 decades after its introduction, the Tiger tank continues to interest military enthusiasts, historians, and popular culture. It appears in documentaries, films, books, and video games, often depicted with the same technical reputation it held during the war. This enduring interest stems partly from the Tiger's embodiment of contradictions. It was both a technical achievement and a strategic miscalculation, both highly effective in tactical situations, yet ultimately unable to influence Germany's defeat. The Tiger represents human engineering applied to military technology, impressive in its technical execution, yet sobering in its purpose. In the quiet town of Bovington, England, one of the last surviving Tiger tanks resides in the Tank Museum. Tiger 131, captured in Tunisia in 1943, has been carefully restored to operational condition, the only functioning Tiger in the world. Each year, thousands of visitors come to see this historic vehicle during the museum's special demonstration days. Many experience a mix of historical interest and reflection that Allied soldiers might have felt when encountering it. The mechanical sound of its Maybach engine, the movement of its tracks, and the deliberate rotation of its massive turret provide a tangible connection to a conflict that shaped our modern world. The technical specifications of the Tiger I reveal much about its design philosophy and intended role. Weighing 57 metric tons fully loaded, the Tiger was nearly twice as heavy as contemporary medium tanks like the Panzer IV, 25 tons, or Sherman, 30 tons. This weight necessitated a powerful engine, the 700-horsepower Maybach HL230P45 gasoline engine that propelled the vehicle to a maximum road speed of 38 kilometers per hour. However, cross-country speed rarely exceeded 20 kilometers per hour, and the transmission, originally designed for tanks half the Tiger's weight, was constantly under stress. The suspension system, featuring interleaved road wheels, provided excellent weight distribution and a relatively smooth ride, but proved challenging to maintain in field conditions. Changing a single inner road wheel could require removing up to 9 other wheels first, a process that could take an experienced maintenance crew several hours under ideal conditions. The Tiger's armament was equally substantial. The main gun, the 8.8 cm KWK 36L56, could penetrate 120 millimeters of armor at 1,000 meters using standard armor-piercing ammunition. Later in the war, the introduction of tungsten core APCR, armor-piercing composite rigid ammunition, further increased penetration capability, though shortages of tungsten limited its availability. The gun was complemented by two 7.92mm MG-34 machine guns, one coaxial with the main gun and another in the hull front. The five-man crew consisted of a commander, gunner, loader, driver, and radio operator Art Hull, machine gunner. This crew arrangement, which freed the commander from the task of operating the gun, represented an important advance over earlier tank designs, where the tank commander also served as gunner. The Tiger's commander could focus entirely on battlefield awareness and tactical decision-making, communicating target information to the gunner via intercom. The interior of the Tiger, while confined by modern standards, was spacious compared to contemporary tanks. The turret basket provided sufficient room for the commander, gunner, and loader to perform their duties without interfering with each other. Ammunition storage for the main gun consisted of 92 rounds, stored in protected bins along the hull sides and rear. This arrangement represented a compromise between accessibility and crew safety. While not as secure as modern under-turret storage, it provided some protection against ammunition fires that had proven catastrophic in earlier tank designs. The driver's position featured relatively straightforward controls, though the substantial weight of the vehicle made steering physically demanding, especially during extended operations. The Tiger's production history illustrates the challenges of manufacturing such a complex vehicle under wartime conditions. Initial production began at the Henschel factory in Kassel in August 1942, with a planned rate of 25 tanks per month. However, actual production in 1942 averaged only 11 tanks monthly. Production gradually increased through 1943, peaking at 104 tanks in April 1944, before declining as Allied bombing disrupted German industry. The final Tiger I completed assembly in August 1944, after which production focused entirely on the Tiger II, King Tiger. Throughout the production period, continuous modifications addressed field experience and material shortages. Early Tigers featured drum-type air filters that proved inadequate in dusty conditions. These were replaced by more effective oil bath filters. The original Commander's cupola, with its 7 periscopes, was simplified to a design with only one periscope plus a vision port. Steel-rimmed road wheels replaced rubber-rimmed wheels as rubber became increasingly scarce. The Tiger's operational deployment followed a consistent pattern across all fronts where it served. Initially, Tigers were organized into independent heavy tank battalions attached to Army or Corps-level headquarters. This allowed them to be deployed to critical sectors as needed, rather than being permanently assigned to specific divisions. Regardless of organizational structure, the tactical employment remained similar. Tigers would lead attacks against prepared positions or serve as the foundation for defensive lines. Their substantial armor and powerful guns made them well suited for breaking through enemy defenses or holding important terrain features against numerical superiority. The men who operated these complex vehicles came from diverse backgrounds, but shared certain characteristics. Tiger crews were carefully selected from experienced Panzer personnel, with preference given to those who had demonstrated technical aptitude and composure under pressure. The position of Tiger commander was particularly selective. Only officers or senior NCOs with proven leadership abilities and tactical understanding were considered. Many Tiger commanders had previously commanded Panzer IIIs or IVs and had to adapt their tactical approach to utilize the Tiger's different capabilities. The technical complexity of the Tiger also required specialized maintenance personnel. Each Tiger battalion included a maintenance company with highly trained technicians, many with backgrounds in precision engineering or automotive repair. Training for Tiger crews developed throughout the war. In the early deployment phase, training was rushed and insufficient, contributing to many of the initial mechanical issues experienced in the field. By mid-1943, a standardized training program had been established at the Panzerschule in Paderborn. New crews completed 6 weeks of specialized instruction before joining their units. This training included technical familiarization, gunnery practice with live ammunition, tactical exercises, and maintenance procedures. Special emphasis was placed on gunnery, as the Tiger's superior firepower represented its greatest advantage. Gunners practiced acquiring and engaging targets at extreme ranges, often exceeding 2,000 meters. This training yielded practical benefits in combat, where German gunners consistently demonstrated greater accuracy and first-hit probability than their Allied counterparts. The Tiger's impact on Allied tank design and doctrine was significant and immediate. When the first intelligence reports of the new German heavy tank reached Britain and America in late 1942, both nations accelerated development of more powerful anti-tank weapons. The British 17-pounder anti-tank gun, capable of penetrating a Tiger's frontal armor at combat ranges, entered urgent production. This weapon later mounted on the Sherman Firefly, creating one of the few Allied tanks that could effectively engage a Tiger from the front. Similarly, the Americans developed the 76mm M1A1 gun as an upgrade for the Sherman, though its performance against heavy German armor proved somewhat disappointing. More effective was the M36 tank destroyer, armed with a 90mm gun that could defeat a Tiger at medium ranges. Soviet responses to the Tiger were equally urgent. The standard T-34-76 found itself at a technical disadvantage, leading to the development of the improved T-34-85 with a more powerful 85mm gun. More significant was the acceleration of the IS, Joseph Stalin, heavy tank program. The IS-2, armed with a 122mm gun that could disable any German tank, began reaching frontline units in early 1944. The Soviets also deployed numerous Su-85 and Su-100 tank destroyers specifically to counter German heavy tanks. Perhaps most tellingly, Soviet tactical doctrine adapted to emphasize flanking maneuvers and coordinated attacks against Tigers, tacitly acknowledging that direct engagements favored the German vehicle. The psychological impact of the Tiger extended to Allied home fronts as well. Newspaper and newsreel coverage often included detailed accounts of the Tiger's capabilities, contributing to a perception that German technology was inherently advanced. This perception concerned Allied political leaders who worried about its effect on public morale and war production. Consequently, Allied information services made concerted efforts to provide context about the Tiger. Technical intelligence bulletins highlighted the Tiger's limitations, its limited speed, mechanical complexity, and vulnerability to flank attacks. Training films instructed Allied tankers in tactics to counter the Tiger, emphasizing teamwork and mobility over direct confrontation. These efforts had mixed results. The Tiger's reputation persisted among frontline troops until the war's end. For the German public, the Tiger represented a symbol of technological achievement as the strategic situation deteriorated. Official media effectively presented the Tiger's technical capabilities, suggesting that engineering excellence could offset Allied numerical advantages. Detailed technical articles appeared in newspapers and magazines. Model kits of the Tiger were produced for German youth, and the tank featured prominently in illustrated books about the armed forces. This focus on the Tiger continued even as fuel shortages and Allied bombing made actual deployment of the tanks increasingly difficult. In the final months of the conflict, German leadership continued to allocate scarce resources to heavy tank production, reflecting both an interest in the technology and its symbolic importance to German morale. The Tiger's technical effectiveness varied significantly depending on terrain, tactical situation, and opponent. Against Soviet forces on the Eastern Front, Tigers demonstrated their highest operational effectiveness, achieving favorable results in appropriate conditions. This success stemmed from several factors. The open terrain of the Russian steppes suited the Tiger's long-range gunnery. Soviet armor was generally lighter than Western Allied tanks, and Soviet tactical approaches sometimes aligned with the Tiger's defensive strengths. Against Western Allied forces in Northwest Europe, performance remained technically impressive, but more constrained by circumstances. The hedgerow country of Normandy limited the Tiger's range advantage, but also provided excellent defensive positions from which Tigers could engage advancing Allied formations. The desert terrain of North Africa offered ideal conditions for the Tigers' long-range capability, but logistical difficulties and the small number deployed to the theater limited their overall impact. The Tiger faced different challenges on each front. On the Eastern Front, the primary issues were the vast distances, harsh climate, and Soviet numerical advantage. Winter temperatures reaching 40 Christix froze lubricants and cracked seals, while spring Rasputitsa, mud season, severely restricted the heavy tank's mobility. Against Western Allied forces, the greatest challenge was air superiority. Tigers could only move safely at night or in poor weather, as they were priority targets for fighter bombers. In Italy, the mountainous terrain severely limited movement, forcing Tigers to operate primarily on roads where they were vulnerable to mines and ambushes. Despite these varied challenges, the Tiger maintained its technical reputation on all fronts, testament to the fundamental engineering of its design and the professional capability of its crews. As the war progressed, both Allied and German tactics evolved in response to the Tiger's presence. Allied forces developed coordinated approaches attempting to outmaneuver the less mobile Tiger and engage its more vulnerable side and rear armor. Artillery and aircraft became primary counter-Tiger assets, as they could attack from positions where the Tiger's gun could not respond. Infantry equipped with shape-charge weapons like the American bazooka or British Piat would attempt to approach Tigers in complex terrain and disable them with targeted shots to the tracks or engine compartment. German tactical employment also adapted, with Tigers increasingly serving as defensive strongpoints rather than breakthrough vehicles. A common approach in the war's later phases was to position Tigers in hull-down positions on reverse slopes, with only their turrets visible, minimizing exposure while maximizing their firepower advantage. The Tiger's technical legacy extended beyond its direct influence on tank design. Many specific innovations refined in the Tiger became standard features in post-war armored vehicles. The concept of the three-man turret crew, commander, gunner, loader, with the commander freed from gun operation, is now standard in Western tank design. The semi-automatic breech mechanism of the 80mm gun influenced subsequent gun design. The Tiger's sophisticated fire control system, with its rangefinder and ballistic computer, anticipated the computerized systems of modern tanks. Even the interleaved road wheel suspension, though not widely adopted due to its maintenance challenges, represented an innovative approach to distributing the weight of heavily armored vehicles. Perhaps most significantly, the Tiger established the primacy of the main gun in tank design, the principle that firepower sufficient to defeat enemy tanks at maximum range is a critical factor in tank effectiveness. The human stories behind the Tiger tank are as interesting as its technical achievements. The men who designed, built, and operated these vehicles represented the technical expertise of German engineering and military professionalism. Erwin Otters, the chief designer at Henschel, responsible for the Tiger, was an accomplished engineer who had previously designed railroad locomotives. He approached the Tiger project with meticulous attention to detail, insisting on high-quality materials and precise specifications despite wartime limitations. Ferdinand Porsche, whose competing Tiger design was not selected, later contributed to the development of the Tiger II and the Ferdinand Asfras Elephant tank destroyer. The factory workers who built the Tiger included highly trained craftsmen, many with pre-war experience in precision manufacturing. As the war continued and personnel shortages became acute, these skilled workers were increasingly supplemented by workers from other countries. The Tiger crews themselves came from diverse backgrounds, but shared the common experience of operating technically advanced equipment within the German armored forces. Serving in a Tiger battalion carried significant responsibilities. Tiger crews received priority for equipment, ammunition, and fuel, even as shortages affected other units. This specialized role fostered professional pride. reinforced by the shared experience of operating a technically sophisticated vehicle. Many Tiger commanders became recognized for their technical competence and tactical effectiveness. Yet, behind this professional narrative lay the practical reality of armored warfare, the constant tension, the physical discomfort of operating inside a confined space under combat conditions, and the awareness that a single, well-placed enemy round could have catastrophic consequences for the crew. The Tiger tank embodies an important lesson in military history. The pursuit of technical excellence must be balanced against practical considerations like reliability, production efficiency, and strategic priorities. Germany's focus on creating a technically superior tank resulted in a vehicle that, while individually impressive, couldn't be produced in sufficient numbers to meaningfully influence the overall conflict. This tension between the ideal and the practical continues to challenge military planners and weapons designers. In every generation, there exists the temptation to create technically impressive systems, but the Tiger's story reminds us that even the most capable weapon is only as effective as the strategy behind its deployment and the industrial capacity that supports it. Today, the Tiger I remains preserved in time, an artifact of a global conflict that reshaped our world. The surviving examples in museums from Bovington to Kubinka stand as silent historical witnesses, their operational days long concluded, but their historical significance enduring. For historians, technical enthusiasts, and students of military history, the Tiger continues to draw attention, a mechanical artifact that influenced armored warfare and left a lasting impression on the historical record of World War II. As we consider its legacy, perhaps the most valuable lesson of the Tiger tank is that technology alone, regardless of its sophistication, cannot overcome strategic disadvantages or industrial limitations. It is a lesson worth remembering in our own time, as nations continue to seek technological advantages in modern defense systems. The most accomplished Tiger commanders achieved recognition during the war, their technical and tactical competence documented in military records. These tank commanders exemplify the combination of technical knowledge, tactical understanding, and leadership ability that characterized the most effective German armored officers. Their successes resulted not only from the capabilities of their vehicles, but from hundreds of hours of training and operational experience that allowed them to maximize the Tiger's strengths while minimizing its vulnerabilities. Their accounts provide valuable insights into the practical aspects of armored warfare, the technical decisions, the coordination of crew members, and the challenges of commanding a vehicle that received priority attention from opposing forces. The facilities that produced the Tiger represented another dimension of the human story behind these complex machines. The primary production facility was the Henschel plant in Kassel, a city with a long tradition of heavy engineering and locomotive manufacturing. As Allied bombing intensified from 1943 onward, production increasingly relocated to protected facilities, including former mines and purpose-built underground manufacturing areas. Working conditions in these facilities were often challenging, with limited ventilation, inadequate lighting, and minimal safety provisions. By 1944, with Germany's available workforce severely depleted by years of conflict, many production workers came from other European countries. These manufacturing challenges help explain why Tiger production remained limited. Despite the tank's technical capabilities, the combination of complex design, exacting quality standards, and disrupted manufacturing made mass production impractical. This continuing interest in the Tiger reflects its embodiment of contradictory aspects of modern mechanized warfare. The Tiger represents both the technical achievement of industrial-age military technology and its practical limitations, the accomplishment of engineering and the challenges of over-engineering, the potential of technology and its inability to overcome strategic realities. In our current era of asymmetric conflict and precision-guided weapons, the Tiger remains perhaps the last great symbol of a period when heavily armored vehicles could significantly influence battlefield outcomes through their physical presence. Yet even as warfare continues to evolve, the fundamental questions highlighted by the Tiger remain relevant. How should limited resources be allocated between quality and quantity? What is the appropriate balance between technical capability and operational practicality? When does pursuit of the perfect weapon become counterproductive? In the final assessment, the Tiger tank's legacy is multifaceted and complex. Technically accomplished but strategically questionable, individually effective but collectively insufficient, the Tiger embodied both engineering excellence and fundamental miscalculations that contributed to Germany's ultimate defeat. It serves as a reminder that military technology, however impressive, must always be considered within its broader strategic, economic, and industrial context. The Tiger could achieve tactical success, but it could not determine the war's outcome, a lesson that resonates through military history and continues to inform defense planning today. As we examine these mechanical innovations and the individuals who designed, built, and operated them, we gain insight not only into a pivotal period of modern history, but also into the enduring challenge of balancing technological ambition with practical necessity in military affairs. As we conclude our exploration of the battlefields where Tigers once operated, we reflect not just on the vehicle itself, but what it represents about human creativity, technical innovation, and the serious responsibilities of military technology development. The Tiger was both a technical achievement and a reminder of resource allocation challenges, a vehicle that impressed its opponents and instilled pride in its creators, yet ultimately could not change the course of history. Its influence continues to resonate through military technical development, museum exhibits, and the understanding of those who study the evolution of armored warfare. The Tiger's story endures across the decades, offering a nuanced perspective that continues to inform our understanding of the complex relationship between technology, strategy, and industrial capacity in modern conflict.